Hi, it's Dorothy Guining with Scrapbooking Quebec. Today is a start to finish process video. So in addition to the step-by-step instructions for this layout, I'm going to explain my creative process in a little more detail. And I'm going to share some tips and tricks on how to create a layout with limited supplies. Now this was my problem. I created this page already with leftover material and I wanted to create a coordinating page. But I had almost nothing left. I had scraps of scraps. This was what I was left with. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to tell you right off the bat, the original page is quite busy. There's 4 photos on the page and there's a lot happening. So I know I want this page to be simpler, airier, more white space, and that for me is simply a question of style. When I have one page that's really busy, I like the coordinating page to be lighter, airier. Also, I like to have coordinating pages that have the same material. So I don't want to introduce anything new to this project. I have a piece of 12 by 12 white cardstock, the same that's in the first page, but then I have these scraps to use. So the first thing I do is I go through the scraps and I'm going to have a look, especially for my larger pieces. I'm having a look at what I have, but I'm separating the larger pieces. And in this case, it's that large wood grain paper as well as that 12-inch border. So I figure I've got a pretty good start here. That border probably measures about, I don't know, about 5.5 inches wide. When I'm creating a page with scraps, I want it to be nice, of course, but I want it to be easy. I figure I can make pages nicer if I do something that's easy. I'm not going to attempt anything too complicated here. So what I'm looking at here are some go-to designs. Now most scrapbookers I know have a few go-to designs. Those are the pages that the page designs that you go back to over and over again. The pages usually always look different because you're using different papers, different photos, different stories, but the design principles are pretty much the same. So that's what I'm doing here, and actually I'm pretty well set up here. I often use a large square of paper as well as a large border. So hey, I'm pretty much set up here, but for whatever reason I'm not satisfied at this point. So what I'm going to do in a minute, because the video is going to speed up, I turn off the camera and I go and I look into my layouts. So the second piece of advice, aside from using go-to designs, is to scrap lift. Now you can scrap lift yourself or you can scrap lift somebody else. Now I find it easier to scrap lift myself because I've already made the page design. So it's easier because I've done it before. So the pages I showed you a minute ago were pages I created over the last few months where I used strips of paper, and both of those projects were projects I made when I had limited material. That's why I thought of them. So what I'm doing here now is cutting up my paper into strips. They are 3/4, half, and 1/4 inch strips, which are exactly the same width of the strips that I had created in the pages that I'm scrap lifting. I left the wood grain paper solid because on the flip side, the wood grain paper is the photo mat. So that's what I want to use it for on this page. When I do a coordinating page, and even with limited material, I do want there to be some repetition. So the repetition right off the bat with the wood grain paper is going to be a large photo mat. So I cut those strips of paper. I reserved a few pieces at 12 inches, so I plan to make a narrow border on the right-hand side of the page, and I place the strips of paper randomly just to have an idea of what it's going to look like. But now what I'm going to do is create my photo mat. So I'm double matting my photo with that white cardstock as well as that wood grain paper. Now I'm cutting the width because that's what's important to me now, because I want to know how large to make this large photo mat with strips of paper that's going to go beneath the photo. But the length of that wood grain photo mat, I'm not trimming it right now because it will depend on what I do with it. I'm thinking at this point I might put my title on it. I might put some journaling. I'm not sure at this point. So the first thing I'm going to do is create my foundation page, and I am starting with that narrow border with 2 strips of paper on the right hand side. Then I trimmed that piece of paper so that it measures 12 by 12 inches with the border. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start lining up these strips of paper and adhering them to the page. Like the page I'm scrap lifting, they're going to be kind of random. All I want here is that 2 strips of paper identical don't follow one after the other on this large photo mat. I'm tearing the ends and the widths are all different, and you're going to notice here that yellowy floral paper, I didn't have very long strips, so where that appears on the page I actually rip it from behind, but I know the wood grain photo mat is going to cover that part, so I'm not worried about it. So I'm continuing, and every once in a while I'm checking in with my ruler just to make sure it's straight. So I'm continuing doing it. And by the way, this is my How to Kill a Kit with Style kit for the month of June 2019. That's the YouTube collaboration where YouTubers put together a scrapbook kit from their stash and use it throughout the month. Well, I take this series, this collaboration, to the extreme, and I use it with material that's been hanging around my scrap room way too long. And I'm going to link up the video for that series below in case you're interested. So I'm almost finished here with this mat, and I'm liking how this looks. Even though there's a lot going on, I'm having fun here with this page, and I still find it airier than the coordinating page. Now I stopped the video, I went and got the punches as well as the decorations and letters and all that kind of stuff that I used on the original page. I also, off camera, backed both of these layouts with a piece of American Craft cardstock just to make them thicker. I'm not using Basil white cardstock here. It's a lighter weight, and it was kind of driving me nuts, so I just wanted to solidify them a bit. Now what I'm doing is playing around with decorations a bit. I don't want it to be too decorated because there is a lot going on here, and my eyes will go crossed if I keep adding stuff to it. So, but what I am doing is doing a bit of repetition, and that, as you can see on the first page, I have 2 tags. So I made a tag with a tag punch by Stampin' Up! For the page I'm making here today. So that kind of creates a triangle that leads the eye across the 2 layouts. And I'm thinking of placing it above the photo. Now I'm getting out my thickers that I used on the first page, and the main title is Walk in the Woods. But what I'm going to add on this page is a repetition with these letters, but I'm simply going to write the date, May 2019. What you see me using here is a product I recently picked up at a crop in Truro, Nova Scotia, and it's like this sticky sheet. I'm going to write it in the comments below what it is, but basically you put whatever you want to adhere in this, rub that wax paper across the top, and it turns whatever you're trying to turn sticky, and it works like a charm. Apparently you can use it over and over again, according to the salesperson. So I guess time will tell for that. However, I do like it, especially with chipboard. What you see me doing here is creating a 0 for my year 2019. And what I did was I punched out a heart, then I punched out a circle around it. That was in the wood grain paper. And then I punched out another circle, the same size, in that peachy pink color, and put it underneath. And that's going to be my 0. And as you can see on the first page, that's what I did for the word woods. I had no O's left, so I had to get creative with it, and I want to do a repetition of that on this page. So I'm adding that to the year 2019. And that's a really subtle way of adding decoration and, in this case, repetition. across the pages is to keep it within a title. It works really well. Now I've decided more or less where I'm going to place my photo. I knew all along I wanted to place it towards the bottom of that wood grain photo mat because the heavy on the opposite page is towards the top. So on this page I wanted the heaviness to be towards the bottom. And now what I'm doing is adhering the title to the top of the photo, May 2019. And like on the other page, I'm going to pop up that heart, that 0 on foam adhesive. And even though it's kind of wood grain on wood grain, in person you can see it, and the foam adhesive does help as well. I'm going to end up tucking that tag on the right hand side of the photo, and then I decide I want to add a second tag as well. So you'll see me fooling around with the scraps of paper there, trying to decide what I want to do with that. And I end up going with the flip side of that peachy pink paper, which is a paler pink, which doesn't appear on either one of the layouts. Again, there are no rules as far as I'm concerned with scrapbooking. I make my own rules, and for me the rule is I like the material I use to be safe for my photos because I do want these to be around for many years to come. And the other rule is I have to like it. So I put that color there. I liked it. I can't tell you why. It just, I looked at it and I liked it. So that's what I'm using. You'll notice I put reinforcers on those tags, and that you'll see I've done that in almost all my videos. I use a circle punch. I use a hole punch first, then a circle punch, and that creates a little ring. And then I adhere that to the hole on the tag. Now what you see me doing is adding some chevrons, and I had added a few chevrons with that chevron punch on the original page. That's towards the title at the bottom of the page. So again, I want to kind of create a triangle across the two layouts to guide the eye. So I'm going to put one of those chevrons pointing towards the date at the top of the page. And that's kind of off camera now, but I'm putting two down towards the bottom. You'll also notice to the right hand side at the bottom of the photo on the page I'm making today, there's two negatives of chevrons in the stripped photo mat beneath the large photo. And that was simply some paper, a scrap that I added to that strip border. I figured I could use that cutout as a repetition from the chevrons I put on the first page. Now what you see me doing here is adding some faux stitching with a template from Stampin' Up, a paper piercing tool, and a pen, and I'm doing it along the right hand side of the page, along that border, but I instantaneously decide that I didn't like it. So I ended up lifting off that page and trimming it away. At this point, I don't even know if it's going to work, but luckily I had another strip of that peachy paper, a little bit larger. So all I did was I made the border on that side of the page a little bit larger than it was. And the reason why I did that is because, well, I just was repeating the stitching. Again, that's part of the creativity process. And I felt it wasn't airy enough. That white space around that border to me was really important. And for whatever reason, the stitching ruined it for me. And I knew right away. Sometimes I don't know right away and I will set the project aside, but this time I knew right away I did not like it. But I am adding some stitching, some repetition from the first page, and I'm adding the faux stitching using the same technique within some of those strips of paper. Not all of them. Some of them go straight across, some of them just partly from the right, others partly from the left. And that is quite simply a scrap lift from the page I'm scrap lifting. That's exactly what I did in that layout as well, and I liked that. So that's all I'm doing here. And I also want to point out at the very beginning of this video, when I was playing around with the go-to designs that I often use with the large square of paper and that border, those were viable options. Obviously, I could have done that. I had enough paper to do that. But I guess, number one, I wanted to have a little bit more white space, I think, and I felt I didn't have enough white space. And I think I just wanted to have a little bit of fun, to be perfectly honest. I had fun doing this type of layout over the past few months, and I think I just wanted to do it again. So I don't know if that's a clear answer, but that is part of my creativity process. So basically, there you have it. What you see me doing there was I ripped the narrow border on the original page. There's a tiny half-inch strip of paper, that yellowy floral paper, and I just ripped the ends at the top of the bottom of that just to add a repetition of what is on the page I'm creating today, those ripped ends underneath the photo. And now what I'm doing is in my kit for the month, How to Kill a Kit with Style Kit. Anyway, in the material I'm using here today, I had these sequins, which are from Felicity Jane, old sequins. They look like little pie plates. They're kind of a brushed gold. And I decided to add a few on the page I'm making today. So what I'm doing now is I'm just adding a few of those to the top and bottom of that vertical border on the original page, just to add a little repetition. Those were tiny and discreet. And to be perfectly honest, I'm wasting way too much time here with that, adding those little sequins. Honestly, I was just taking a lot of time doing that for whatever reason. Anyway, there is my layout. There are the two pages together. I hope you enjoyed this layout. I don't plan on doing these start to finish videos very often. I just thought this was a great opportunity to do it today, just to explain the creativity process a little bit more, as well as show you a few strategies to use when you're creating a page with limited material. So go-to designs are always good. Scrap lifting is always good. Make it easy and follow your gut feeling. Do you like the page or don't you? So that's it for today. Let me know if you like this video. I hope you did, and have a great day. See you soon. Bye-bye.